Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharma swarupine avatara varisthaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. So today we will be discussing about Sri Ramakrishna, the great master. As you all know, in the previous classes, it has been quite a while since we last discussed. It's almost 1 month we did not have any session. So just to recapitulate, I'll briefly talk about what we discussed in this second chapter, in the beginning of the second chapter, section, or you may say, the second part of Leela Prasang, where we were discussing Sri Ramakrishna as a spiritual aspirant. And we discussed why it is necessary to study both the human and the divine aspects of the avatar. Any incarnation, there is a tendency by the devotees of that particular incarnation to highlight the divine aspect, because they don't want to consider their guru or their ishta to be seen as a human being. Now that, according to Shardanji, defeats the very purpose of the incarnation. If if the divine aspect of an incarnation is stressed, then there is a distance between the aspirant, the sadhaka, and his ideal. Maybe he is the guru, because for most of the direct disciples, Sri Ramakrishna was a guru. At the same time, for many generations afterwards also, there is a tendency, if you see the life of Jesus, Buddha, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the successive generations of disciples try to highlight more of the divine aspect. They did not want to discuss anything about the human life or the human limitations which an incarnation shows, because it is very clear in our scriptures that whenever one assumes a human body, he has to come with all human defects. Otherwise, why should an incarnation come as a human being? He can be a deity, like we have so many deities, Shiva, who are not incarnations. We have Ganesha, we have so many gods and goddesses. Why not meditate on them? Why do we need incarnations? And why do incarnations come? We also discussed that. As the Gita says, as Sri Krishna says in the Gita, that whenever there is a preponderance of adharma, and whenever there is a danger that dharma is practiced by less and less number of people, to maintain balance in the cosmic order, the incarnation comes. So when he comes, what does he do? He comes as a human being with human body, with human nature. But at the same time, he has a divine aspect, which does not allow the human aspect to dominate in his life. But all the struggle, Sri Ramakrishna as an aspirant, the whole second chapter or the second part of the Leela Prasang, which is made of 5 parts, you all know. So there is the Sadhak Bhav Purvarda, Sadhak Bhav, that is the second part. The first part of the Leela Prasang is Sri Ramakrishna's childhood, Balya Bhav, because even childhood is important, how he struggled and how he showed that there are some divine visions which marked him as separate from other children. That is also very important. But at the same time, the second part of the Leela Prasang is more important, because we can connect with that. We don't have a divine childhood like Sri Krishna or even Sri Ramakrishna, but at least as an aspirant, there are many common things which you can see we to some extent share with Sri Ramakrishna. Not that he was obviously far superior. Even Swami Vivekananda, they say, Sri Ramakrishna said that he was born a Dhyan Siddha. When other children were playing, he could absorb himself into deep meditation. That apart, most of the other disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, householder as well as monastic, had to struggle the way we are struggling. Only thing, they struggled more intensely and they had the grace of Sri Ramakrishna, maybe because of their past karma, but they made rapid progress, whereas we make slow progress. That is the only difference. That is what Swami Shardanji says. That, and according to Swami Vivekananda, who wrote about Sri Ramakrishna, that in one life he lived the lives of so many spiritual aspirants of so many paths. That is the uniqueness of Sri Ramakrishna. Whereas we stick to one path as given by our Guru and struggle to even attain the culmination of that path. Sri Ramakrishna had many gurus, as you all know, but that will come now slowly in this section, in the other chapters. But first, Swami Shardananji, that's what we discussed. Why it is necessary to study the human aspect. So Shardananji very clearly says, out of enthusiasm, most of the successive generations, I'm not saying the direct disciples of Jesus or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Buddha, they might not have distorted the life, but as generations pass, there is a risk of diluting the message of the master. That is why when Buddha passed away, after 500 years had passed, unlike Sri Ramakrishna's life, where we see all his teachings were recorded, if not when he was alive, but of course they were recorded when he was there. That is what M did. But even the other things, most of the things were published when the direct disciples, Holy Mother, was alive. So they are more authentic. In Buddha's case, it was not so. After 500 years, the message got diluted so much that the emperor, who was a Buddhist emperor, said, let us have a meeting, council of all the monks all over India and abroad. So all the Buddhist monks came together, and then they had a great difficulty to find out which was Buddha's original teaching. Because many things have changed, will change, definitely it will change. So here we have a record where Swami Shardananji says he worked so hard for this book just to ensure that nothing unauthentic comes. There will be many unauthentic things, and there were many unauthentic things published even during his lifetime. And Swami Shardananji knew that. And Sri Ramakrishna himself has corrected once or twice. Many times somebody used to quote him, and he used to say, no, I didn't say that. Even M, once he made a mistake, he said, I never said that. So this is very authentic, and Swami Shardananji wanted to write a biography which was not only authentic but very useful. So in this he says, the incarnation's human side, or the incarnation sadhana period, as a spiritual aspirant, is equally important. We have two parts later on. Sri Ramakrishna's Guru Bhav, first part, Sri Ramakrishna's Guru Bhav, second part, where two set of disciples come to him. And then we have Divya Bhav, that is the divine mood of Sri Ramakrishna, and Narendranath. That is because Narendranath was his special disciple. So these three parts show the divine side. Most of the three parts which follow this. But this part gives a lot of importance to the aspirant Sri Ramakrishna, whose sadhana would have been lost if Swami Shardananji had not recorded this, because many people, including Hriday, who saw Sri Ramakrishna doing sadhana, were still alive. There were many others who were alive, and though Shardananji himself did not see, they all came when Sri Ramakrishna already had the realization. But how did he struggle? So some of the old people who had seen him even as a child were still alive, because Sri Ramakrishna passed away at the age of 49. So naturally, there were many people in their 80s or 70s who had seen him as a child growing up, doing sadhana. So they had a lot of information which Swami Shardanji carefully collected, and authentic information, of course. So after that only, he decided to write this Sadhak Bhav. That's why you see in Leela Prasang, which he wrote the third part first. third part which he himself and other direct disciples had observed. So he was sure of what he himself saw, what he himself heard. So he started with that third part first he wrote. And Sadhak Bhav, the second part of the life, if you go according to the chronology, was written much later because he wanted to make sure that he contacted the right people with the right information, double verify it, and then write it. So, here now, after discussing the importance of considering an incarnation as a spiritual aspirant with all the human limitations, which are as important as the divine attributes of that avatara, because we are not born with these divine attributes. We are all born with human limitations. And if we know that our incarnation, our inspiration, our guru, our inspiration, that is guru's guru and all the lineage of people, they were also human beings, then we get a lot of inspiration that we can also strive to attain to and make spiritual progress, because they also were born as human beings. They also had their problems. They had also had their troubles. So they come to show, they come down a stage down from their divine aspect to the human aspect voluntarily, so that they can show us the path and provide inspiration to us. Now, then what is the purpose? What is the difference? There are many saints in India who have done the same thing. We can get inspiration from Mirabai, from Kabir. They were also born as human beings. They were human beings. They were not incarnations, but they were great devotees. Can we not learn from them? Now, as an answer to that question, what is the difference between saints? Sri Ramakrishna, of course, in his beautiful example, he says, in the ship, you will see many boats. Some are small boats, some are big ships. The boats can take 30 people, 40 people at the most, whereas big ships can carry thousands of people across the ocean. So he was giving that example. And the boat is the huge ship is like the incarnation. It doesn't come very often. Boats you can get, and the boat, there is a risk of sinking, whereas big ships are safer to travel, much more easy. So when incarnations come, it is like a big ship coming. Now he gives another example. What is the difference between? There are saints who have shown in their life devotion to God, and people watching them get inspired and also try to practice. Whereas the difference between an incarnation and great saints, historically we have seen so many great saints have appeared. India or even some of the other countries has a great tradition of saints, but India has a lot of them because there were so many. It's a national obsession. Every time, incarnations may not come regularly, but saints have appeared. Even when there was this invasion by the Mughals, and there was a lot of temples were being destroyed. Even then, in the midst of that political turmoil, you could see great saints in the 16th century, 15th, 17th century. Great saints were born in rural areas, in poor households, and even rich households like Mirabai, who gave up everything for the love of God. So such saints are no doubt produced, but incarnations are like big ships. Now, what is the difference? This beautiful example quoted from Sri Ramakrishna by Swami Shardanand. He gives the example of three friends visiting the blissful grove. So once three friends went for a walk through a field. In the middle of the field, they found a place enclosed by high walls. There was something great going on inside, but it was nothing could be seen. Sweet sounds of music were coming from inside. They wanted to see what was happening there. There were three friends, as I said. They looked around, but they did not find any entrance. What could they do? One of them procured a ladder and climbed up while the other two stood below. They were very keen. There's such beautiful celestial music going on. So let us see what is going on there. So one brought a ladder, other two stood there. Just tell us what happened. Upon reaching the top, the first friend looked down into the enclosure and burst into a loud, joyful laughter when he saw the festivities within. He was so impressed that he jumped right into the enclosure. He did not even wait for a moment to tell his two brothers. They were surprised. What has happened? He simply jumped inside. However, we shall find out for ourselves. Then the second friend, Clive, like the first person, he also exclaimed joyfully, and then he was so impressed by what was going on inside, he also jumped. Now, the third friend was a bit wiser. He also saw that, okay, both my friends have jumped, something nice is going on there. So he climbs the the ladder. And when he sees the festivities, he just thinks, see, if I jump, then what about the people who will be passing this way? They will miss out. They should know there's no gate here, nothing is known, but they will also would like to enjoy. Why should I be selfish and enjoy this party myself? So with these thoughts, he forcefully turned his mind away and descended the ladder. So descending the ladder is what is the literal meaning of avatara. Avatara means to descend. Avatarana, to go up. The opposite of going up is to come down. So coming down, avatar is always coming down the ladder. So here the example is given. So he forcefully, for a sadhaka, the natural tendency is when they see the divine vision, they just merge into it. They don't bother about the world. Why should I bother? I got what I have worked so hard for. They don't think. There are so many people struggling who should know what is going on. So like the two friends, most of us or most of the sadhakas in the history of, they were great sadhakas, no doubt. They have climbed the ladder, gone and seen and jumped in and enjoyed the bliss, divine bliss. But only an incarnation. This is the second function. First function is like the ship, carrying many people across the ocean, not like boats. So that is the difference he shows. And here, willingly, you see, he had to control himself and he had to come down. And then he says, he came down and started shouting, there is a mart of bliss in that place. Please come and let us all enjoy it together. Thus, he brought many people to share the bliss. Now you see, just as we cannot discover the cause of the third friend's wish to share bliss with others, you may ask, he could have done what his friends did. What made him do differently? So we cannot ascertain why the desire to do good to humanity exists from childhood in the minds of avatars. So he is leaving it open. He says we can't understand why only some people, especially avatars, because that is their job. He knows that is what they do. But why do they do it? Can they not just, like Narendranath, when he was first had that wonderful the Samadhi, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, he was so happy that he asked Sri Ramakrishna, you bless me that I remain in that state for months together, and once in a while just to eat some food, let me come back. And then let me go back. So Thakur was very angry with him. He said, what kind of selfish person you are? I thought you will be like a big banyan tree, giving solace and giving relief to many suffering humanity. I thought you had come for that, and now you say you are happy with your own samadhi. So that is one of the reasons why these avatars, like the third person who climbed the ladder but did not jump in, he came down, restrained his mind, and that is why Sardanji says, we do not know what makes them come down. Because this is something we cannot, ordinary jiva cannot understand. He just is stating facts. Now, the next topic which he discusses is very important. He says, why do avatars practice self-control like other human beings? Now we understand that self-control is necessary to control the mind, and controlling the mind, we can reach higher states of spiritual bliss. That is known, that is in the Shastras. But why should incarnations do it? They are already realized souls who have come down to help us. They can just remain in their own state. Like Holy Mother, she once or twice used to just disclose uh, some of her divinity, but immediately she will hide it. She will just behave as if she is an ordinary human being with knee pain, rheumatic pain, and this. See, I have so many troubles. But once it came out of her mouth, unknowingly, in a high state of mind, somebody said, "There's so much of trouble in life." Suddenly, she said in a very exalted mood, "Why? I have never seen suffering my whole life. I have never suffered in my whole life. You people keep on complaining and crying that you have trouble, but I have never suffered. I don't even know what suffering is." Now, at that time, those who heard, they would have been surprised because they saw mother is suffering with madcap Radhu and his daughter and so many things, poverty, not having enough food to eat. If any other household or any other devotee would have faced those sufferings, they would have said, our life is full of suffering. And here Holy Mother says, I have never seen suffering in my whole life. Why you people say there is so much of suffering? So you see that attitude is also there. So you may say, why should an incarnation show that he is suffering? Then what will how will the devotees be inspired? That's what he says. He doesn't need self-control, but still he practices self-control because having taken a human body, he has to behave exactly as a human being so that human being can get some inspiration and he shows the way. So based on the previous statement, Swami Shardanji is saying, some readers may conclude, see, he's like a lawyer. He doesn't want people to just believe. Many of the biographies, especially those movements which are very fanatical, they say you either accept what is written there in the scripture, our scripture, you cannot ask questions. You accept or we'll just cut off your head if you don't. So here he not only asks the devotees to reason, but he also gives a reason. He says he is making room for doubt, people who will doubt this, doubt the fact that Sri Ramakrishna is an incarnation. So he says some readers may conclude, which happens, most of the readers will say, what is that? Avatars have, some readers mean some of the people who consider their incarnations as ultimate. They say there's no other avatara except our avatara. Other avatars are smaller avatars, but our avatara is the ultimate. So there are many sects which believe. For them, our avatara has nothing human in him. Since the day is born, they will only highlight the miracles. In Indian religion, outside also, without miracle, how can an avatara be an avatara? Whereas Swami Vivekananda told exactly the opposite. He told Shardanand ji, knew in future he would write a biography. He said, whoever writes a biography, please keep out the miracles, because people will run after the miracles and not catch hold of the avatara's main message. So here also, the main message is how Sri Ramakrishna controlled his turbulent senses, the sense organs that we struggle to control. If he does not show us how to control it, and if he just asks us or gives us a talk or a parable that the turbulent senses should be controlled because Gita has said this. No, he is saying some readers who would like to believe that their incarnation never faced any difficulty. Even though Holy Mother said, in now and then she would say, I don't know what suffering is, but at the same time, and she said, Sri Ramakrishna has placed a picture of bliss in my heart. But at the same time, when these people were beating her, especially Radhu and all, they used to throw burning coal sometimes and sticks, beat her with a stick. She used to get angry like any other human being. If she was really But internally, maybe she had no suffering because she could take her mind and above the limitations. So, Sardanji says, how can we, some readers, doubtful people, or those who want to consider that Avatara is the greatest, and also he has no human problems, he has no human issues, so they will conclude that they will definitely, our Avatara never struggled. He was pure, 100% pure from the beginning, and he had absolutely no trouble facing the turbulent senses as we do. Some may assume that the senses always remain under the Avatara's control from their very birth, like calm and well behaved children, and that Avataras can therefore easily lead their minds away from the senses. So, what is great, right from childhood, is born as a yogi. So, they don't have any problems, but we are born in such a horrible situation with so much of problems around us, troubles around us, so much of temptations around us. So, what does an avatara know? So, deliberately, they have to show that is one of the purpose of the incarnation, that they will be born under circumstances which are worse than ours, if not as worse as ours. They are definitely worse than ours. And how they struggle, that is why he says they have also practiced self-control. We say in reply, I mean, Swami Shardanji, we tell these people, no, it is not so. In that respect, also, avatars act like human beings, like us. They fight against the senses, they move towards the goal after becoming victorious. So, how they became victorious, all those things we can learn, but they don't make a drama. It's not acting, they really struggle. Now, he gives a lot of examples. He says, now he is going a bit into the psychological aspect of an incarnation. Why do we have innumerable desires in the mind? If the desires to self-control means controlling the desires. If you take Buddha or Jesus or any other incarnation in the world, everybody has agreed on one thing, that the desires are the cause of all the problems. In fact, the whole of Buddhism does not believe in any concept of God except saying that you are the creator of your problem. Not only you, your mind, which is full of desires, is the root of all problems. He does not recognize any other problem. If you ask any Buddhist, he will not believe, you cannot be forced to believe that there is some divine intervention. He says it's our problem. We have created the desires, we have to get rid of it. Tanha or Trishna, as they call it. Trishna is known as Tanha. So to get rid of desires is the only goal which leads to nirvana. So but Swami Shardanji doesn't ask us to accept that. He said, accept everything, except whether there is a avatara, accept in 1 million avatars if you want, accept one avatara if you want, don't accept avatara. But he says, the nature of human mind is same. Whatever be your religion, whatever be your pursuit, anyone who has tried to learn even a little about the human nature, I mean, a little thinking person who wants to know how his own mind works, must have observed that his own mind is made of infinite layers of desires, ranging from gross to subtle. Some people may have only gross desires, but there are a lot of subtle desires which we may not know, but they are still there. And the subtlest are the desires in the Karana Sharira. As we know, Vedanta says there are 3 layers of human personality. Stula desires are easily known. We see something, we want it. We want a gross object. We run after it. That is very easily detected. Then there are subtle desires, desire for name and fame. You can't see it. And the person also may say, no, I don't care if people respect me or don't respect me. But that desire is there. Though he may deny it, he will still have that desire that people should respect me. People, even spiritual people, think that my spirituality should be respected. They may not have gross desires, but they still have the subtle. And what is the subtlest desire? That is not known except incarnations. It is not even known to sadhakas. Subtlest means the desire, the samskaras that are there in the karana sharira, in the seed form. Now, that is something which only incarnations can see in a personality. So, apparently, when Sri Ramakrishna met Girish Ghosh, why did he take his responsibility? Not because of his gross desires. He knew these gross desires, drinking, and all sorts of evil desires that he had, mountains of them, not one, hundreds of desires he had in the gross. But somehow Sri Ramakrishna saw, because he had the wisdom to see the inside, not only the subtle mind, but also deeper than the mind, the samskaras, which he knew there was absolutely nothing there. He was born with a divine mission, and once he gets rid of this, that is why he took his responsibility. So it's not that Sri Ramakrishna, of course, externally we'll feel Girish Ghosh was very, a person, because we see only the external. We judge a person by his external gross desires. Far more dangerous are the subtle desires. Far more than that is the subtlest desires which he speaks of. So he says, Swami Shardanji now argues, if you somehow are able to overcome one gross desire, another will come forward to obstruct your path. When you conquer that one, the next one will appear. Thus, when you defeat a gross desire, when you think you have defeated all the gross desires, a subtle one will arise. And when that one is defeated, a series of subtle desires will come, will challenge you. For example, if you renounce sex, the desire for money will arise. When you refrain from indulging in both lust and gold in a gross way, desires for beauty, desires for name, fame, power, position, everything will emerge. Or even if you get rid of all the worldly attachments, he says even for sadhakas, laziness, that is known as tandra, or a spell of infatuation in the guise of compassion, will occupy the mind. This is very subtle because it's difficult to understand. You may think you're so compassionate, helping others. You have got rid of all the gross desires, and now suddenly, he says, the infatuation which comes in the guise of compassion, that I have helped so many people. Now they should, my compassion should be recognized. I have done so much. That will come and occupy. So he says, you may understand how difficult it is to get rid of all the three layers of desires. So the master's advice now is giving three very nice examples how to shun these desires. Now, if you read Buddhism, there are many, the Eightfold Path, and there are so many rules. I mean, it's like a huge manual. Then sometimes you will wonder whether I will be able to get rid of desires. But Sri Ramakrishna will condense everything into very, very simple parables. It is described in the third part, that is Guru Bhava Purvartha, when he becomes a guru and the disciples start coming to him. That is when he will give these examples of his own spiritual life, how he struggled and how you should struggle when you are trying to realize God, when we are on the spiritual path. So, his advice, now let us see what Swami Shardanji says. The master described the inscrutable nature of the human mind, as he described just now. One may go, another will come. It's like rooting out the weeds. You remove some weeds, some others will grow. So, how to get rid? He always cautioned us to avoid the traps set by desires. In order to convince us, that is what Swami Shardanji says, because he himself heard all these things, he would sometimes cite examples how he had thought and acted during the events in his own life. He's not just giving advice. He said, I also had this problem, and this is how I solved it. Why did he say it? Because he really felt it. It's not that he was acting. Those people who have doubts, saying that how can an incarnation have desires? He should be 100% perfect. He cannot have desires like us. If that is the case, then what will we learn from him? So reader will understand, he says, if we narrate an incident that illustrates our master's behavior, our guru's, his guru's behavior. So advice to women devotees in this respect. Now he's specifying, because you see most of the conversations, if you read the gospel, you will find 99% of the time men are there. There is a reason, because in those days, when elderly people like M and other male devotees came, it was not very common to see women sitting with men. It is very rare. You show me in gospel, all the devotees are male devotees. So it's so difficult to get what his advice was to women disciples, unless he himself told. So that's why Shardanji is quoting this. So what was his advice to women devotees? In fact, you will realize that he was so particular that one day when, because it was a very orthodox society, women, they were very free with Thakur because he was like a child and they never felt shy in front of him. But the problem is other men devotees came, they used to run away. So one incident, perhaps you know, Sri Ramakrishna, like a child, was sitting and some women devotees, one or two came. They were very devoted. They wanted to come when men are not around. There were many reasons, not just they felt shy. They would think that what will these men say? They were so much concerned about social etiquette and all. It will be a big scandal. Oh, these women go where men are going. They even had to go separately, sometimes escorted by men, but men whom they knew very well, men of the family. You can't just go with strangers. So many things. It's a very orthodox society. So you have to understand these things in that context. It's not the world like today, where you are that gender bias is not there. So whoever went to the master, whether male or female, was deeply attracted by his amiability, his courteous behavior, and wonderful, unselfish, and pure love. They were anxious to see him again and again whenever there was an opportunity. Not only did they themselves visit the master frequently, but they would also make special efforts to bring their acquaintances with him. They said, why should we just get the benefit? Let us bring some friends along, so that they could also enjoy the pure bliss in his company. One afternoon, one of the women devotees we knew, he is not naming them because they were alive when he published this, just to create some kind of preserve their privacy. You know, in those days, women were very much concerned that their name should not, they were always hidden and they would not even come out without the parda. When men, guests came to their house, they had a separate quarters. And in fact, Thakur, when he was in Kamarpukur, he had to disguise as a girl to go and meet some of the women. That famous incident is there. He could not meet because the men of the family would scold if a male person could go to the inner quarters where women were like imprisoned. So anyway, here they came, and one of the women devotees we knew, that is Swami Shardanji knew, went to visit the master at Dakshineshwar with her stepsister. So both were women, and that woman's sister-in-law. So 3 women went. After bowing down, they took their seats. Normally, he would sit on the small cot and there would be a mat where they would sit. Then master kindly inquired about their welfare and began to talk of the goal of human life to love God. Then he says, this is one of the conversation. He says, is it so easy to take refuge in God? Inscrutable are the workings of Mahamaya, the great enchantress. Does she free anyone so easily? A person, perhaps he has no relatives. She entangles in this world a person who has no relatives, it can be male or female. She will somehow entangle him or her in this world with a pet cat. That poor person, he doesn't have a family perhaps because he's poor. But anyway, collects fish and milk from here and there, begging from other houses because of the attachment to the cat, and says, "What can I do? My cat can eat only fish and milk." So he doesn't have the money to buy fish and milk, but he will go from door to door and out of as if saying that, you see, some argument he will give. He can easily get rid of that attachment of that cat, but anyway, he will not. So he is giving one example. Then another example is giving them. You see, these examples you will not find in the gospel, because gospel was recorded when M was there, and M, in the presence of M, these women would not have come. So these women whom Shardananji knew must have told this directly to Shardananji, their reminiscences, much afterwards maybe. But he has recorded because they were all authentic devotees, women devotees. So he wanted to show that it's not only men who went. Unfortunately, what is recorded is mostly his conversations with men, but that doesn't mean he did not give advice. He was very particular and he gave a specific advice suited to their needs. So, take for example, he says, an aristocratic family, and this Parda system was more observed in aristocratic families. Poor families, somehow they didn't mind because their women had to work, they had to go here, go there. But rich aristocratic families, they were very proud. In fact, that Laha family in Kamarpukur, they were very proud. They said not a single male member has ever gone to our women's quarters. He was so strict and no, women should be indoors. He was very strong that, so he had that ego. And Thakur once decided to break his ego. So he said, okay, you have said that, I'll do it. He was not very old, he was very young. So he dressed as a woman and went inside. Thakur was very good at mimicry and dressing like a woman. He went and then he met them and had conversation with them, came out, and then he told him, you had challenged that a man cannot go. See, I went and showed. So also, he says, aristocratic family in which women have lost their, that is still worse. If they were married, at least they were allowed with the parda to come out. If for some reason they had lost their husbands, if they were widowed, then they could not even come out. Laws were very strict for those women. All who had lost their, some of them had lost their husbands and children also. All are gone except a few widows who live on as if they had cheated death. I mean, somehow they are living, waiting to die. That was the condition of widows. So, they have gone, a part of their old house, they were all living together, widows. You can imagine, for they cannot mix with anyone, they can't be seen in public, they have to practice lot of austerities, they cannot eat fish, they cannot eat this, that, so many things. So, one part of their old house was collapsed. And the other part is was about to fall, is falling to ruin. Some banyan saplings and some spinach have grown on the roof automatically. The widows cook curry with that spinach because they can't even be seen to cultivating in the garden. If they have to depend on the mercy of some of the male members, if they had relatives, suppose they didn't have relatives, they had to lead a very difficult life and wait till death. So the widows would cook curry from the spinach that was growing on the terrace, which automatically grew, and would continue their household life. What for? Why not? Why do they not call on God? It is indeed time, it is indeed a right time for them to take refuge in Him, but they won't do it. They will still struggle and do many things. Again, perhaps a woman has lost her husband shortly after the wedding ceremony. She is a young widow. Let her call on God, but she will not do it. She becomes the caretaker of her brother's household. Her hair is braided and secured in a bun on the top of her head. This is what Thakur used to make sometimes fun because he could see this was the custom of the days, and a bunch of keys hangs from a corner of the cloth thrown over her shoulder. So in many houses, sometimes these women used to also dominate. She carries herself with arrogance and commands everyone. All the neighbors are frightened at the very sight of that monstrous woman. She tells everyone, my brother can't even have a meal if I am not present in the house. I mean, she was so happy. She could have easily taken the name, they would have supplied her needs. The widow was not supposed to do all these things. But she wants power, so she dominates to such an extent, and the poor brother was perhaps very uh, mild. So he says, even he cannot feed his family. It's because without me, and she used to shout loudly, and all the neighbors would hear that, see, because of me, these people are surviving. So that is the type. She tells everyone, my brother cannot even have a meal if I am not present. What a wretched woman. Why don't you see what has happened to you? So, what a mysterious coincidence. Now, when he was telling these examples, obviously he could read that there were some such people in the room. He's talking of the women devotees. What a mysterious coincidence. The sister-in-law of that devotee's stepsister, who had met the master for the first time on that day, was indeed such a caretaker in her own brother's household. So, without knowing anything about her background, Thakur could read the minds, not only the causal, the gross mind, but the subtle thoughts, but also go deeper and find out what is her problem, because they had come for some spiritual solace. And unfortunately, in spite of all the circumstances, that lady was not able to understand. So nobody had told the master about this beforehand. But in the course of conversation, the master referred to that example in order to explain the powerful influence of desire and to describe the infinite layers of desire. See, she doesn't obviously have a gross desire, having lost her husband when she was very young. So there is no question of having any such desire. But then she might not even have the other desires, at the subtle level, but the subtlest desire to control and to have some kind of authority on others, that would not go. And that would make even a person who is so, according to the standards of that day, so powerless, she could assume so much power. So, the infinite layers of the mind, Swami Shardanji is giving us this example to show that many desires may not be there outside because they are not seen. That doesn't mean there will not be. So, listening to those examples, the stepsister who had brought her nudged the devotee and whispered, Sister, how strange. Why has the master spoken these words today? How will my sister-in-law react now? One acquaintance replied, what can we do? It is the master's will. No one has prompted him. I mean, that is how uh, he tried to convince. He could know beforehand the people who are approaching him and could give the exact advice at the right time to the right person when he or she needed it. In this case, he's giving examples because we don't find many examples of Sri Ramakrishna talking to women devotees. So in one case, again, you will find that Thakur used to make fun. There was another incident which I don't know whether you have read it. Some women came like this, and suddenly they heard the voice of men. So they were afraid because they had not told some lies in their house and escaped and come to Thakur. So they just went under the cot and hid themselves. And Thakur was laughing because he saw that those people are below the cot, hiding themselves, and these men would not go. So they were struggling there. When shall we come out? When the men go, we will come out. So such incidents are there. That means he used to talk. Unfortunately, it is not recorded, but these things are recorded. So now he comes to the point how the Avtara fights with these subtle desires. Gross desires we can fight, we can even conquer them. the subtle and the very subtle desires which we don't know. So when one studies human nature, it becomes very obvious that a higher a person's mind rises, the more intense is the pain caused by subtle desires. So sometimes it is a very significant truth that you see some people don't get affected. They are very insensitive. Even if a person comes and scolds them, and then we think, oh, he's such a spiritual person. Nothing happens. It's not always spiritual. See, he's so gross that he's so lazy even to react. And he is quiet not because he's not getting angry. He is quiet because he cannot react. So Swami Shardanji says you have to be careful that just because a person does not react doesn't mean that he's gone above the gross desires. But normally when a person overcomes the gross desires, he doesn't care for these small things, a little angers, little quarrels. He just ignores. He is in his own, and he's more worried about the subtle desires. He's handling them. So these lower desires don't bother him. That is what he wants to say. And the more a person's mind goes towards the subtle plane, the more pain is created. Even if he gets a wrong thought, a very, very gross person, unspiritual person, even if he tells 100 lies, he will not repent. But if a person who is advanced spiritually, even by mistake he tells one or two lies, Thakur's life is an example. By mistake he said Tui to Holy Mother. Now we say so many times we just ignore, do not give proper respect. And here he had all right to call her Tui. She was much younger. But he had so much respect that thinking that it was Lakshmi, his niece, he just said Tui, and then suddenly realized it was Holy Mother. And this small mistake, it was not intentional. He could not sleep, and he went on calling Holy Mother and saying, "Say, I'm sorry, I said once, twice, thrice." He went on saying. That shows that the pain caused by the subtle problems, subtle desires are more felt more, not that they become sensitive. To become sensitive is something different. But when spiritual growth comes, even small mistakes, we feel bad. It may not be seen by others, but they feel that, oh, we caused pain to somebody. We should not do it. And they really feel it. So a person who has committed, a very gross robber who has committed theft, dacoits, and many times can repeat those acts. They are not at all feel sad about what they did. They do it so often that for them it is not cheating. It is they don't even regret. There's no feeling of guilt. But a noble and high-minded person who is very much attached to his character, his moral position in society, even if somebody blames him a little bit, he feels terribly guilty and suffers from great distress when merely thinking of those acts. So how could this thought come to me? That is his worry. He has not committed any wrongdoing. He has not done anything wrong. Whereas a gross person, definitely who is a habitual robber or a habitual liar, for them he is not at all sensitive. That shows that the higher the mind rises, the more he. So, although throughout their lives, avatars refuse to indulge in the enjoyment of gross objects, they may not fight with the gross objects like normal human beings. We may not see that. But he says the fight against subtle desires in the mind is just as human beings. So they also have that, and some examples he will give later on in the next few paragraphs, which show that they may not have gross desires to enjoy life as human beings, other human beings do, but they do have. So subtle desires are also equally dangerous. In fact, they are more dangerous. So the horrible images of the desire that arise in the avatara's mind, sometimes if it arises, cause them distress 1,000 times, as it happened in Sri Ramakrishna's. One small, by mistake, is addressed His wife was Tui. And then he could not sleep. He could not sleep. For example, there's another, he had uh, told some doctor that he will come and collect some medicine from his house. And at night, he suddenly remembered, I had promised, I have not gone. So he could not, he woke up everyone. He said, no, we have to go. We have to go, and at least, and they said, the house is closed now. So he went, opened the gate, and shouted loudly that Dr. Masha, I have come. And then he came out. He said, I have given him word, if it's closed, but I have to go. And they would not rest. Sri Ramakrishna could not rest because I have told a lie. I told somebody I would go and I have not gone. So these horrible images of desire, which, if at all they arise in their mind, uh, they cause more distress. And this they frankly admit. Sri Ramakrishna was the only incarnation who admitted that these are the problems he faced. Therefore, how can we say that their struggles and withdrawal from the senses and all the other struggles were just acting? So they were not acting. So that's the point. Now we'll close. Yeah. Is there any question? We have a few minutes.
There are few incidents in the gospel where the women were there.
Yeah, there are quite a, yeah, but not so many. Not so many. Very few, because if at all they had come, it would be during some festival.
No,
Like Brahmosam, huh?
Two married ladies came, they were fasting, and Thakur said,
Yes, yes.
you do that.
Yeah, some stray incidents are there, but majority, I'm talking of majority. Yeah. Yeah, they used to come because they were not bound by social rules. They were quite senior and they had overcome, they could come anytime. Even when men are there, they didn't bother. Yeah. Any? No. Shall we conclude?
Next Saturday no class because of AGM.
Next Saturday is what?
AGM, so no class.
Oh, yeah.
Or immediate class.
Okay. No, I can't. Next Saturday, we have an annual general meeting of all the members of Ramakrishna Vedanta Center. So there will be no class. The meeting is at 3, so it's not likely to be over by 4:30. Even if it is over, it may not be possible. If at all there is a class, I will inform it on that day. Otherwise, Saturday class will not be there, but Sunday will be there. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ram